Nickel5 this time got bad English tea on the stage. The worst of the English tea. I heard there's a good Chinese tea going around somewhere. Let's get the Nickel team up here. Lynx and Todd, David Attenborough.
I think Bad English Tea wanted to kick it off.
Cool. So we just wait for him to figure out his mic. Well, welcome everyone. Well, before we start, shameless plug for the SDK updates that have been happening lately. If you're not following it in the RAW channel, just having a blast working with it. You can use the new SDK to make really fun stuff. You can install the SDK like this. Let me just type it into the chat. If y'all are excited about this as much as me, go and have fun with the new SDK, which allows you to do really cool stuff like use Asyncio to get price information, to stake, to unstake. You can even now in the new SDK do like super fast operations, like gathering a stake operation across multiple subnets. Here's an example, putting back in there. You can get all of the information about the different subnets very easily. Let me just pull that directly in. It's a very easy call like this. And with these things, you can basically do everything that you would want to do to make explorers, front ends, Streamlit apps, Mav bots, just like that. Throwing it in there, the how to use the async subtensor, which is much faster. I'm currently making a Streamlit app that allows you to completely take Mog's job with a fucking Streamlit app. You know what I mean? You can build a CLI in a couple minutes. It's really quite fun. So I actually posted in the RAW channel this morning. I will be putting out prizes to people that build the coolest stuff with the SDK. So up to 10 tau if you can make cool things like Mev bots and front ends and things for people to DCA into the subnets. Because if you guys have been following what's happening on testnet, it's quite fun. Here's an image of the prices playing around for the first 16 subnets. Please look in the channel. It's pretty fun. A little ghetto. I know it's not tau stats, but tau stats will come. So you can play around with this to build all sorts of different tooling for people to help people buy and sell the tokens at the right prices and have all sorts of trading, but in an algorithmic way, which I think fits our community better than just using front ends. So everyone, without further ado, we have David Attenborough, Lynx, V Valentine, QCat. Are you guys all cats? Is it a cat? It's a cat army.
Yeah, just about.
Space Cats, to be more precise.
Space cats. I feel slightly offended. I'm more of like a general dog kind of vibe, but
I get it. I'm a dog person.
We should create probably another role for you guys specifically. Hey, Bad English, you're up there.
Got it. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Sorry, not sure why I had issues there. Are we good to go?
Yeah, we are. Great to have you here.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. So our thinking was we would do a very quick intro on Nickel5, then pivot to the teams that are building Subnet 48 and 57. We're targeting 10 to 12 minutes per subnet, and we should have some time for questions. Does that work?
Works for me.
Okay, awesome. So hi, everyone. My name is Ian. You might know me as Bad English on Twitter. I have a lot of opinions about Bittensor, and I share them on Twitter, and I usually get myself into trouble. Almost a year ago, I started a business focusing on mining and developing on Bittensor. My vision was to find smart, mostly non-crypto, AI, ML-oriented developers, introduce them to Bittensor, collaborate with and incentivize them, and then see if we can create value for the network. We started through mining a number of subnets in Q1 and Q2 of last year. For a period of time, we probably made more money manipulating through mining than we did legitimately mining. And then I think, like everyone who spends time within Bittensor, you start kind of coming up with your own crazy ideas for subnets, things you would like to launch on the network. There are two themes across all of our subnets. First is prediction. Weather, sports, real estate. How can we utilize the distributed architecture of Bittensor to improve the efficiency of determining outcomes. In my opinion, Bittensor is exceptionally good at distributing complex problems that consume large quantities of data. And then secondly, definitive source of truth. Our subnets cannot be manipulated. We mine them ourselves. Well, we can't mine them ourselves because our miners are actually smarter than us. We don't use any synthetic or artificial data to measure miner performance, which would be an opening for potential manipulation. We focus on real-world outcomes, and we rank those miners accordingly. Our team is now over 10 full-time developers. We're mostly based in Colorado. Actually, just brief plug, if anyone is here for ETH Denver in February, we're going to be hosting a Bittensor dinner on an undecided night. So just ping me if you're here for ETH Denver and come to a Bittensor dinner. For Bittensor Subnet 30, we will soon be launching an alpha publication called PigPro with affiliate and subscription paths to revenue. We are also collaborating with a decentralized sportsbook to potentially introduce a real money element through EVM compatibility. There are a lot of legal implications there, so we are taking that slowly, but we do have a larger plan there. And then the two subnets that we're going to be talking about today are Nextplace Subnet 48, which is a real estate price and time to close prediction subnet, and GAIA Subnet 57, which is a geospatial task platform. Matt and Sam will be talking about Nextplace, followed by Gabriel, Stephen, and Noah, who will be talking about GAIA. Nextplace is going to be a short presentation and a demo of the product. GAIA is going to be a presentation on vision with some data on what the subnet has generated so far. We're hoping, it's taking a little longer than we anticipated, but we're hoping to launch a dashboard for GAIA very soon. And then, okay, I think I've rambled enough. Here are Matt and Sam on Nextplace.
Hey-o, let me figure out how to share my screen here. That do it?
I can see it.
Yep. Oh. Hey everyone, my name is EstateCat. Lynx and I are the lead devs on Nextplace here at Nickel5. And we're going to be demoing Nextplace. Going to make it short and sweet to leave some time for GAIA. The main premise of Nextplace is trying to use open source intelligence through the Bittensor incentive network to try and displace the monopolist aggregators of Zillow and the MLS. So there's a monopoly problem in the US real estate market. The MLS, the multiple listing service, locks down what should be public housing data in the US. And this forces real estate agents to use their platform. So the seller and the buyer agents both need to use the platform, or else they won't have access to the data they need or to the homes on the market. There's some lawsuits ongoing here, but it may only affect real estate agent pay, which isn't really solving the problem that we would like to be solved. Zillow launched in 2006 and appeared to be disruptors for positive change, but they've gotten so big that they're just another bad actor. So Zillow, they proudly advertise being within 10% of the sales price for on-market homes. The on-market part is very important. And this really isn't very good. So you can imagine a home being listed for $1 million, and it might actually be worth 1.1, and that's a huge difference. So that's really not giving good information to sellers or buyers. And Zillow is nowhere near 10% for off-market homes. So you can imagine being a seller and you look at this estimate for what you think your home is worth. And if your home is actually worth $1 million and you list it for $900K, you're missing out on a ton of value. Zillow has 220 million monthly users, which is almost half the size of Twitter and bigger than Discord, so it's an absolutely massive platform. As I said, there's a lot of issues with this estimate. Not only is it not very good, but it convinces the buyer and the seller that it's a good, accurate estimate of home value, and it misleads on both sides. So when the seller lists a home, the Zestimate will move dramatically towards that listing price. So that means that the Zestimate really wasn't any good when it really just takes the listing price for the value of a home. And then the buyer trusts this valuation. So a seller can move the Zestimate just through their listing price, and then a buyer goes to the Zestimate to see if it's a fair listing price. And the Zestimate just moved to that listing price. That shows that it's not giving good information on either side. Zillow has also closed off their API to stop competitors from entering. And if you want to be a competitor in the US market, you'll have to pay the MLS for every market to get data. So not only is it very expensive, but you also have to deal with a bunch of different jurisdictions, a bunch of different APIs. So there's a huge lift to be anyone that can compete with Zillow. So our solution is fourfold. First, we wanted to beat the Zestimate. So we know that a new platform being more open is not good enough to be a strong differentiator. Just because we have more access to data does not mean that people will like us. So we need to have a better valuation for the home. And we don't have any guards on miners. We let them do it however they want. We expect them to go out to other APIs beyond the data that we provide and run their own ML models to get a good valuation of homes. We then serve the data to the public. Right now, we're doing this with the Price My Home tool. So anybody can go to our website and get a valuation of their home or a home they want to buy. And we have a Nextplace portal launching soon, which Matt will demo later. We also need to grow our user base so that people know who we are. Zillow is really aggregating demand right now. People know what Zillow is, so that's where they go to look for the valuation of their home. So we're trying to get our name out there with Google and Twitter ads. Currently, we have about 200 monthly active users on Price My Home, but we want that to grow by several orders of magnitude. And we'll also monetize our data. So through the portal, which Matt will demo, we will be able to connect real estate agents with buyers. We can monetize that interaction. And then we'll also charge for API access. We have good data, and we can sell it to anybody that wants to build another platform. Some results that we've seen, we beat the Zestimate consistently within 3 weeks of launch, which was pretty crazy. I think we only had like 0.4% of emissions at the time. And this shows that not only is the Zestimate bad, but our miners are really strong. We're currently beating it over 80% of the time, and competition is constantly increasing. Results are always improving. Now I'm going to pass it off to Lynx for some demos.
Thanks, Sam. Let's see if I can figure out how to share my screen here. This one, share this window. Let's see. Can you see my screen, everybody?
All good.
Okay, my computer is complaining to me, but I'm just going to ignore it if you can see my screen. So this is our product portal. We've been building this out. We're hoping to launch this next week. It's currently in beta. So I'll just show you, if I'm a home buyer and I'm interested in buying a house, let's say I'm interested in the Denver market, I'll scroll down to Denver here. We'll see that we got some data loading into the map. And quick caveat, this is just a subset of the actual data that I was using to test this out. I didn't want to break the tool right before a demo, so I'm going to push up all the data probably tomorrow or over the weekend. So I can basically navigate this map and click on houses. You get pretty much what you'd expect here. The listing price, the address, listing date, number of days on market, data about the house, beds, bath, square footage, home type, when it was built, etc. And then of course all the photos for the home as well. I want to draw your attention to this valuation up here. So this number, this is the average predicted value for this home from our top 10 subnet miners. So if you look at our Tau Stats incentive curve, you'll notice that it is highly weighted to those top 10 to 15 miners, because those are the miners who are helping provide this number, this actual value right here. So this value is what is used to generate this graphic down here, which ultimately gives some idea as to whether or not we think, we being, basically the distributed intelligence of this subnet, think that this home is overvalued or undervalued. So the very middle of this blue territory is our valuation. Anything that gets, towards the red is overvalued. Anything towards the green is undervalued. Spoiler alert, they're mostly overvalued. So to try to bring this full circle, you can explore any market. We have houses all over the US. It's basically the same thing. To kind of bring this full circle with where we're trying to provide value and actually drive revenue is, if you're shopping for a home, you can click this contact agent button. So if you're a real estate agent and you come to our platform, you can use this realtor sign up, enter some information about yourself and your business, and include your realtor license number. We will use that number to verify that you are who you say you are, that you are a legitimate realtor, and we will get a list of areas, zip codes, that you're allowed to sell homes in. So we have this recently viewed list over here. So if you're a home buyer, you can click through these, see what you've seen recently. When you click this contact agent button, you'll actually get a list of real estate agents who are allowed to sell you this home, and you can contact them directly. So We bring people to our site because we have a much better valuation metric, a provably better valuation metric. The benchmark changes over time because real estate sales are seasonal. It's definitely trended upwards, but on average, we sit around 85% more accurate than the Zestimate with, I think, generally about a 10x RMSE improvement and a 4x improvement on average profit loss. So, I mean, very provably, visibly much better than the Zestimate. People will come to our product because we can save them money at the end of the day. If they're buying a house, you're selling a house, we have a better representation of what that home's value is because we have this incentive network and this distributed intelligence. We can charge realtors to sign up with us and charge them a monthly fee because we can tell them, we have X many thousands of buyers coming to our site every day. And if you sign up with us and pay X dollars a month, we will drive business to you with this contact agent portal. So real estate tools for the actual agents. We have this comp analysis. This is a really common tool for real estate agents. Essentially, this looks at homes that are similar to this one and are also in that same neighborhood that have sold in the last couple of years and gives you a spread of those sale prices. And that's useful for buyer agents to figure out what a good offer to the seller agent might be. Request a tour basically just puts the buyer agent in direct contact with the seller agent. If you've signed up with us, you can save and share these. So any that you save will show up in your favorites and those will persist across sessions. I can just kind of go over, I don't know, let's check out San Francisco really quick and see what data we have over here. And again, for the caveat, this is currently a pretty small subset of the actual data space. If you see this exclamation point here, that'll tell you that this home is overvalued. So, we can see that this home is dramatically overvalued. They decided to upload like an artist's rendition watercolor of the house. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea, but they did. And we have this really cool product here called Find Deals. So this basically programmatically searches the data space of homes currently listed on the map and finds you ones that are undervalued according to our subnet. So you can find these by clicking go or info, and you can see that our valuation is here and the listing price is here. So this is a little undervalued. Can show off the filters are pretty obvious. I mean, there's not a lot to go over here. Just, you can set a minimum price or, a number of beds, baths. These are pretty much just quality of life, everything you'd expect from an application that does this, home type, blah, blah, blah. You can reset the filters. You can save filters to your account so you can reload them. Go over one of the tools for seller agents. So Price My Home, Sam mentioned this briefly. You can enter your email address. Oh goodness, I got to do all kinds of stuff. Let's see if I can beat. Oh, bicycles. Okay. So when I was going through this, it didn't. Oh my God. All right. You know what? Screw this. I'm not doing it. You can enter your email address and then home information about the house you're interested in selling. We will send this data to participating validators, and they will send it to the subnet miners. Basically, derive that valuation in the same way I already described, and we will email you with a valuation of the home that is free. So we don't charge people to do that. Kind of to recap here, we bring people to the site because we have a better valuation metric that can save home buyers and home sellers money. We drive realtors to the site because we can give them business and we charge them a monthly fee. And this, is obviously open source and it's really cool and we're super excited about it. So really quickly before I log off, again, this is in beta, but we're hoping to have this launched as early as next week, hopefully no later than the following week. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Sam to finish up.
Yeah, I just wanted to cover what's next. So you just saw the portal where, as Matt said, we're hoping to launch that very soon. We're also going to expand into Canada, the 51st state. Sorry, that's a joke. We're going to add more US markets. We're adding them constantly. I think we have about 50 ready to come in next week. We're going to advertise more. We want more people on a platform now that we have good data. Always adding more homes, and we're developing an API that will open up data for third parties to use, and they would pay for that. So that's another stream of revenue. That's all I got. I'm going to pass it off here to, I believe, David Attenborough for GAIA.
Maybe we should cover any questions for Nextplace before we switch over.
That makes sense too.
Totally. Let's go to the chat for that as well. But in the meantime, I'm always interested in the problems that you guys had making this incentive landscape work, because prediction problems are a unique class of incentive mechanism. I'm sure you had your fair share of issues. Can you guys talk a little bit about how you went through that process? Like, what were the biggest problems that you solved when it came to doing prediction subnets? Like, how was your incentive design exactly created? Like, what's the mathematics? Why did you pick these parameters to measure, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the biggest challenge with the subnet has always been the data space. So we're looking at, hundreds of thousands of homes on average currently listed on any given day. Thousands of those homes are coming onto the market and leaving the market every day. So we have a really big, really dynamic data space. And figuring out how to manage that effectively has always been a challenge. Also, we're relying on these APIs that are open source. A lot of this data is not open source. And so sourcing data and dealing with the data space has always been a challenge. In terms of actually, figuring out how to incentivize this, we are working with a really conveniently simple fact that we have ground truth, right? We know what a house sold for. Sam built a pretty, straightforward distance function that looks at the predicted outcome versus the actual outcome. And that's what we use to score miners. We pushed a change pretty recently that, basically looks at more recent predictions and weights those higher than older ones, specifically so that we can, incentivize people to improve their models so that, basically if they make improvements over time, they have an easier time staying up in the rankings, and it's easier for those changes to propagate quickly. Sam, do you have things you want to add to all that?
Yeah, Const, you mentioned that prediction markets are difficult to work with in this incentive network, and in some way that's true, but I'd actually like to push back and say that it's a lot easier because we know that nobody can manipulate this because we have a sale date, and if the miner predicted before that sale date, then they are not manipulating it. So we just require that, and it's really cleaned up a lot of the issues that subnets often have, which is that someone can just, if you're evaluating with the model, someone can just overtrain to fit that other model, but we don't have to worry about that because we're dealing with a ground truth in the real world.
Right. So on some prediction subnets, one of the problems that you have is that if the curve isn't steep enough, somebody can just give really average predictions and take all the UID space up. I'm assuming you guys have solved that somehow. Like, can you speak to that? How do you guys make it so that there's so much pressure towards getting better and better at this?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned our incentive curve at the beginning, and we basically give almost all of the rewards to the top 10 to 15 miners. And there are houses that are constantly being sold and constantly being listed. So the data space is very, it's very dynamic, and it's very up to date, and that it's very current, right? And it's also seasonal, right? I mean, real estate sales are visibly seasonal. So if you have a model that's working pretty well in November, and you're doing well, and you're sitting somewhere, maybe you have a bunch of hotkeys that are up towards the middle high part of the ranking, that's great. But then as soon as December and January rolls around, you're screwed because you need to update your model because the season has changed and real estate sales are very dynamic. So I think the nature of the data space really requires miners to keep improving their models over time, retraining and updating with the current data that we provide, so that they can actually maintain their position in the subnet. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it is. It does. And you can see from the curve, I put into the chat here, it's a hockey stick, right? So there's no reason to attack that by registering many UIDs because of the way that the steepness of the curve. What do you guys think that the top miners are doing here? We were looking at some of the images here of the guy who uploaded a drawing, right? So I'm assuming that the miners are running you're expecting they're running image models on top of that data to predict the actual housing price?
Yeah, so we provide all of the currently listed homes up front via our website, and we're including that via API very soon. And so we anticipate that the top performing miners are downloading all of the data ahead of time that's listed, basically training their models ahead of time so that they're not actually inferencing their models like in real time when the synapse comes. They're just doing a lookup. So they're inferencing their models ahead of time. We allow people, like, Sam said, we allow anyone, any miner to use any API that they want, right? And we actually provided a couple months ago, Sam provided a bunch of information for miners, basically a walkthrough for how to get images. So we expect that these top performing miners are probably running vision models as well, and running those vision models on these images, maybe even pulling text and descriptions from other APIs and running LLMs on those to, pick apart things. Like, you can imagine if you look at the description of the home, you could tokenize that and figure out, does it have new hardwood floors? Does it have a recently remodeled kitchen? Things like that, and including that in their inference.
And do you think that that's way more sophisticated than what they're doing in this estimate? Like, do we have any understanding of what they're doing there?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
I've read some reviews around what people think this estimate is doing. And of course, we don't have any real insight into their algorithms, but people have postulated online that they just use comparisons. So maybe they'll look in the same zip code and find some similar details and then pretty much just give an average of that. And then maybe the market in the area has gone up by $5,000 in the last month. So they'll increase it by some amount close to that for that given home. So it's really pretty unsophisticated, but it was just the first platform that was giving these widespread valuations, and it got such a hold on the generic market that people still just go there, and it doesn't matter that it's not a great valuation.
Yeah, is there anything that you guys are doing to stop Fish from just buying the houses at the prices that he's predicting?
Fish can buy all the houses. We don't care. They're yours.
Great. I mean, it just makes you guys have more accurate predictions, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, just to piggyback on what Sam said, we don't know what this estimate is doing, but we know that it sucks. So that's all we really care about.
Thanks, guys. Well, no more comments from me here. If we want to go to GAIA, or if there are any questions in the chat, sounds like people are just... Oh, here we go. Is there a leaderboard of stats to show how close miner predictions are getting to the sale price? Yeah. Do you guys have anything that shows like how much better we're doing, like day by day?
Yeah, so you can check out our benchmark page on nextplace.ai. And like I said, the benchmark changes over time, so it trends upwards. But like, we just went through the holidays, which introduced some chaos because basically the sales volume like tanked during Christmas and New Year's. So there's a little bit of chaos going on there right now, but you can see exactly what you're saying. So you can look at the table of recently sold homes. There's usually, I think I just look at the last couple of weeks and I take a random sample. So like, it just shows you a few hundred. You can tab through those and you can actually look at the difference. So the delta between our predicted sale price and the actual sale price versus the Zestimate's predicted sale price and the actual sale price. And then I'll show you, pretty much unanimously that ours are a lot better. You'll notice that sometimes the delta is 0. And that's just because oftentimes a home sells for what it was listed for. And that's not actually a viable mining strategy. One of our base models does that and it doesn't perform, but it's just something that you can see when you look through the data.
What's the what's your estimation of the total available market here? Like, how big is this market?
Are you talking like data space or dollars?
Yeah, dollars. Like, a 1% increase in the accuracy of predicting housing prices in the United States. Like, how much is that in dollars? Like, what's the delta there?
That's a really, really cool idea. I hadn't thought of that. And, if things play out the way we hope, I mean, maybe we'll find out, right? I mean, if people start using this tool and are getting a much better valuation for the homes, we might actually see that reflected in the real estate market, nationally. I'm not a mathematician by trade. I don't know how I would figure that out ahead of time, but that's a really cool idea.
I mean, just jumping in there, Matt. I mean, we focused on real estate because it was a massive addressable market. Our initial interpretation, and one of our advisors who previously worked at Zillow indicated that the Zestimate was not a high performing benchmark to utilize to calculate home prices. I think when you look at real estate in the United States, I believe there are over 3 million registered real estate agents. Real estate as a category is the largest asset class. The real estate data companies, Zillow, Redfin, where there's a lot of consolidation, are multi-billion-dollar industries. Our vision here, I think we are starting small, and accessing higher quality data is at the very top of our priority list. But when we are able to access that data, convince validators to pay higher priced API licenses for API keys, I think we're going to be able to accelerate this subnet and really produce a valuable output that can better predict a home price than one of the largest operators in the space.
And you already are. Obviously, the best prediction of the price would probably come from somebody actually going to the house, says Zick in the chat here. So, but that's not what you're really competing against here, because you guys are working on a different scale, right? Like,
Right.
how do you look at every house in the United States all at once?
Yeah, it's a big data problem, so you need a big data solution, and going to every house on the market is not a big data solution.
Yeah, and that's a good question from Zick, but that's not what Zillow does either, and they're an 18 billion market cap. So this isn't. We aren't competing with getting a perfect valuation, but we are competing with a network that has 220 million monthly users.
So, for the bull case for the network, right? You guys started with the appraisal of housing prices, but if you get this right, the appraising business itself has a TAM that is bigger than housing. Is there any reason why you would stop at houses? Why not cars? Why not insurance? Why not different types of real estate or company evaluations? Yachts?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really cool idea, and I mean, I would be really excited to work on that. If we grow as much as we can nationally and multinationally, maybe we start branching out to other similar industries after that.
I think that one of the benefits of Bittensor is the ability to bring markets to things that there aren't markets already attached to. It's one of the problems with trading subnets, because they have to come up with a way of doing novel types of markets on top of already a very liquid market. But houses, and I'm sure there are so many other things that we can think of that don't have so much attention for appraisal and pricing that you guys could focus on with this. I'm really excited for the future of the subnet, guys. Should we jump over to GAIA now and talk the second round?
Yeah.
Actually, just before we do that, one more comment on the data. I think when people look at Nextplace, and the mining task is trivial, right? You just have to estimate the sale price of a home and how long that home will take to sell at that estimated price. But the data that is generated here has insane value. It has value to real estate agents. It has value to every homeowner in this country. It has value to every homeowner globally once we start expanding markets. Data companies are worth billions of dollars in this category. I think we set out with this simple task, but we have a much bigger vision here. And based on the quality of miner outputs, even today, we are extremely optimistic that this is going to be much bigger than what we thought it would be when we just decided to register a subnet that was focused on real estate prediction. Yeah, sorry to jump in. If the GAIA guys want to take over and get started. Noah, are you starting here?
Yeah, just a moment. Okay, it looks like I'm gonna have to quit and reopen Discord real quick to share my screen. Sorry about that.
While you're at it, there's a question here for the one last question. It's a bit of a tricky one. Could a miner that is waiting register multiple miners and submit the same estimates on multiple miners? Like, basically, is there resistance against duplication?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just typing in a response when you started asking that question. So I sort of address this briefly. So the data space changes constantly, right? Real estate sales are seasonal. In order to stay like high in the rankings for more than a week, you have to update your model. You have to continually improve. You have to continually train on new data. It's like a very dynamic, a difficult data space to work in. That might be, I mean, maybe there's a solution where you could figure out how to do that, but I think it would be really, really hard to do. And I mean, we don't really see that happening on the subnet. So yeah, it hasn't come up yet.
Thanks, Links. Are we ready on GAIA side?
Looks like it. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, we can.
Cool. All right, so this is going to be a little different than Nextplace presentation. It's more of what I would say is an elevator pitch. We don't have a dashboard quite ready yet, but it's coming soon, within 2 weeks, I hope. So we'll just dive right into just a quick overview of what it is and why we're really excited about it. So we are interested in this field, me and Steven and Gabby, we all come from geospatial backgrounds. So we were like very excited to see that there was an opportunity to get into geospatial machine learning in Bittensor because no one else had done it yet. So why this is exciting to us and why it's important in general is because these geospatial models are often the backbone of many products like disaster mitigation and forecasting or logistics or climate modeling, insurance companies. The sky's the limit. Pretty much every business uses geospatial data in one way or another. And a lot of that is legacy technology. So it's an area that's ripe for the picking with the future of machine learning. The challenges that we face are generally the same across most machine learning. We have really complex data. We have a lot of siloed data, and it's generally very computationally demanding to run these models. So our goal is to focus on small expert tasks that solve a specific problem, and we want to have a lot of those tasks on our platform. So miners won't just be competing to improve one model, they'll be competing to improve many. So our basic vision for the architecture of that would be that these individual expert tasks are scored individually and they have their own pipelines, but that they are designed in such a way that they can link together to answer more complex questions. So that's our central idea, is that they'll be organized kind of like a graph-like structure. So our soil moisture model could feed into a vegetation index model, and then those outputs could be used to do a crop yield forecast that might be valuable for a farmer. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Steven to talk about our soil moisture model, which is one of the first tasks that we're offering.
Cool. Can everyone hear me right?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Noah. Okay, so one of our first two starting tasks is soil moisture prediction. The main goal of this task is to address key global challenges that where soil moisture is a fundamental parameter for. At a data access level, we can fill in temporal gaps in existing soil data sets, which often have pretty heavy delays on access and large institutional paywalls. In a bigger way, the task serves as a foundation that lets us build out this chain of models, to build applications ranging from agriculture to disaster response to global climate change modeling. So as it currently stands, this task asks miners to develop machine learning models that predict soil moisture values, surface and root zone, 6 hours into the future for a variety of randomly selected regions around the world. Predictions are scored against SMAP ground truth. SMAP is soil moisture active passive. It's a satellite from NASA that indirectly measures soil moisture values. Our main metric is root mean squared error, which is also what most papers in the research field use as well. The current baseline model performance is at around 0.1 root mean squared error, but it shows pretty good generalizability to different climate types, which is important for the global scale we're trying to achieve. The benchmark we have set, which is kind of an average over many different research papers, is around 0.06 root mean squared error. So we expect miners to develop or extend our base model, make new models to hopefully get us to that 0.06 root mean squared error or further. And I can now pass it off to Gabriel to talk about the geomagnetic task.
Hi, thanks, Stephen. So yeah, this task is definitely, I guess, an outer world concept, but it is a task that is to predict geomagnetic DST index. And the reason why this is important is because it helps mitigate space weather impacts on critical systems in and around the Earth. Most people, they don't think about space weather and the effects it has, but it is truly important. Miners are asked to predict 1 hour ahead, and with that, they can start by using the base model. But because this is a time series machine learning base model, we highly encourage miners to tune their base model parameters, or we highly, better yet, encourage miners to create their own models. This is just really important because it can help with satellite risk management, power grid management, and potentially evolve into aurora forecasting, which we all love to see those. And yeah, I'll pass it back to Noah.
So I will just talk briefly about our incentive system. As it stands today, we're just doing task-specific scoring and just rewarding higher accuracy. So keeping it pretty simple. And right now, our tasks are split 50-50 in terms of overall score. But what we're really excited about is what is going to happen in the future. So the first concept that we are working on is a bounty or royalty system for contribution of new tasks. And why we want that is because we don't think between the three of us that we can possibly develop all the tasks that we would like to see on this subnet. So we really want to make it like a collaborative science effort where people, if they have a specific research focus and they want to compete with that task on GAIA, they can bring it to GAIA, and through a combination of owner emissions and creative incentive manipulation, we should be able to pay them either a royalty or a one-time fee to bring us like a valuable task to the platform. And we hope also that those tasks would integrate well with the existing tasks. So, and then going into how we balance incentive per task, we would like to have a supply and demand based weighting. So each task has its own pool, and then the pools will adjust based on how many requests they get, hopefully organic at some point, but also synthetic. And then just depending on how many miners are also supporting that task, the overall share of incentive for that task will adjust. So that's a brief overview of our incentive system and where we're headed. And then we'll just close it off with this and then open it up to questions. Basically, what we're trying to do is build this, mixture of experts platform. And it's not really a single model, but it's many models. And we think that it'll be really friendly for future agent integration because each model can act as its own tool that an agent could call. And we're really excited about all the potential pipelines for revenue. We're reaching out to startups and also to academic conferences in order to kind of share this concept and try to get more academics on board. And we hope that we can start, using all of this data that we have around us. There are petabytes and petabytes of geospatial data that are generated every day. And it honestly is hardly touched at all. I mean, there are very specific use cases, but there is a lot of value in focusing on improving efficiency in all business areas by just using the data that we already have around us. Plus, we hope that along the way we can maybe find some little solutions to like big problems like climate change and stuff like that. So anyway, that's Gaia. We can open it up to some questions. If anyone has any questions, I know this was a little bit less comprehensive than the Nextplace. We just launched, so we are hard at work on actually getting this to the concept that you see here.
David, fantastic. Super interesting. I have one question that comes to mind immediately. 6 hours on soil moisture. Why is that the range that people are interested in? Or is that just a dummy problem that's getting you guys started on the models? It seems like such a short period of time.
Yeah, I can answer that. That's a good question. So it's kind of a balance between soil moisture actually just not changing physically on the ground quick enough to like make it challenging to predict if we measure too soon. But at another level, the ground truth data we use, SMAP, at its fastest, the temporal resolution is like 3 hours. So you can get every 3 hours a new time step of what the soil moisture is. So 6 hours seemed like a good balance there. There is a lot of challenges in using this data, and like I said, there's a lot of temporal gaps. So even though SMAP is available at 3 to 6 to 12 hour time steps, there's usually on average 2 to 3 day delay on the access. So if some company or application needs real-time data, they have to wait 3 days. But what we can do here in the future is once we see models start reaching the benchmark, we can still validate their accuracy and their model predictions based on that 6 hour time step, but also query them to generate new data in between the existing time steps. So effectively, we can provide highly accurate soil moisture data without any 3 day massive delay.
So they can get real-time moisture information. But if I'm imagining this is for a farmer, correct? Like a farmer needs to know when to plant the seeds. Why would, if it's only 6 hours, why wouldn't I just go and feel the soil? I'm sure that's a really stupid question.
No, that's a good question. So I think that the farmers themselves wouldn't be using this direct model. For an agricultural pipeline, we think that we would have to extend this with several other models that feed into a chain. And essentially what we would do with that is provide a comprehensive report on a farmer's farm. So we would look at soil moisture predictions that would also then feed into a vegetation index. And we're going to take some climate modeling for their region. And then those inputs can all feed into a crop yield forecast. And that is the kind of model that would be more actionable for a farmer. So they could come and they could run that model and say, okay, am I planting corn this year or should I plant soy? What can I expect to be the highest yield? We could even have another task that talks about potential future prices of corn and soy. So that's kind of how we're envisioning it, is that we build these pipelines of many small expert models into a kind of like a report for some specific industry. So agriculture, soil moisture makes sense, but soil moisture can also be a strong backbone for flooding risk, for wildfire risk. There are a lot of different directions it can go. So that's kind of why we chose starting with that one.
And not just for farmers, but information about that can be useful for determining crop yields is also important for people that trade commodities. Correct? Right? Like
yes.
Down the pipeline here is an extreme amount of information and like interest from people that are trading these types of things. Geospatial, like it must include this sort of satellite data, but does it also include, just out of curiosity, does it also include, say, like the movement of ships and whether or not shipping lanes would this fall underneath the vision for the subnet?
Totally. So that's kind of why we wanted to build it as a platform, because I don't think that we would be able to to contribute all of the possible paths to this, but that data does exist, shipping lanes and ship location. And again, like in logistics improvements, there is a path to trading, and hedge funds are interested in that data. So I think that's why we're interested in kind of like making it more of a collaborative thing rather than a we're just building this, because if anyone wants to build that for us, we want to make sure that they are compensated for the time that they put into that.
Sounds like you need like some sort of like root network inside of the subnet that picks the things with validators, right? Bad English, is
Yeah,
that correct?
it's gonna be tricky. I think the simplest way for now is just a kind of like a bounty payment out of owner emissions, and then also we could do a hotkey attached royalty where, say someone contributes an entire task data pipeline baseline model, and we validate it to be, a good task to add into the subnet. Then we could say, okay, this hotkey gets, you know, 3% of the miner incentive, and until the task is replaced by something better, or just in perpetuity. It could be fluctuating based on how much the task gets used. I've also thought about like, potential L2 to help solve that, although that gets a lot more legally complicated since we're all based in the US.
How about when it comes to just pure weather prediction? I met a guy in an airport about 4 months ago. He was trying to do a subnet on Bittensor. I don't think it was you guys. And he was currently working in a startup that raised on $1 billion valuation, purely on the basis that they had a good PhD student that had good models for predicting the weather. And apparently, this is also an incredibly lucrative, predictive problem. Are you guys thinking to focus on that, or all of this is sort of very related, right? Is it get satellite data, get real time data, but is that something that you guys are thinking about as well?
Definitely. So I would say that Stephen would be our equivalent PhD student with all the good models. He has a background in astrophysics and quantum machine learning, whatever that means. So basically, we think that the soil moisture could be a good component to a weather predictive model. And one of the next tasks that he's thinking about building for us would be a precipitation model or cloud cover model, which would be another component to like a greater weather model. But I think it is a great place to focus. It's hard to compete against Google DeepMind. They're kind of the industry leader at this point, but I'm sure there are other companies that are working on this.
Oh,
The next
we will beat them, I'm sure. The inside of the weather space, there's like moisture, right? There's hail, there's rain, there's thunder, there's lightning. There's all sorts of different models, if I understand correctly. Um, like there's a machine learning model for every single type of thing that you could measure with satellites. Is that correct? Is that sort of
Yeah,
how the industry moves? And so, in the future of this subnet, like the vision is that you'll have almost all of that in one place with the highest accuracy. So you can start working on higher and higher level problems, and that's where you said like you eventually want to work on climate change, because hopefully we're going to be building the most accurate models there are.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why we need to splinter it up. I mean, if we were to wrap this all into one model, and the computational requirements would be quite insane. So that's really the hardest technical challenge that we face, is that how do we get this to act like a true mixture of experts model at some point, where we have some sort of gating network that decides which models to call on to answer some sort of question. I think that's where advancements in agents will be really helpful for the future. I did sort of mention that, but I think, if we see a really powerful GPT level O3 or agent that can sift through the tools that we provide it, to answer some sort of very complicated question, that we don't have to solve the direct challenge of how do we combine all these models with their different data types and shapes and inputs and outputs.
And even more than this, David, is that you work on these small problems, right? You have worms per square foot model is apparently a really big deal. The soil moisture, I'm just kidding. You have the hail prediction, you have all these things on the subnet. And then if you create another leaderboard or another challenge that it can be the mixture of those, you don't need to develop the mixtures model because the miners will do it themselves as long as they can query the network, right?
That's true.
Right, so that's how Bittensor works. Like I often tell someone or something like, "Oh, I want to build this complex mixtures model on top of the network," and I'm like, "No, don't do that. Just figure out how you would evaluate the mixtures model that you would be creating yourself, and let the miners do that themselves because it is an open network, right?"
Yeah, totally. That's a great point. I didn't actually think about it that way.
I think you guys will certainly beat DeepMind on this. It's always fascinating to hear about the quality of people that are mining Bittensor subnets. DeepMind researchers are most likely on this call and mining your subnet if you were to frame it properly. So we'll be able to break down those walls as well. Questions from the chat here. Would it be possible for someone to create a task through .gaia and then mine it themselves? It sounds like a bit of an exploit angle, but there's from Lucian.
Yeah, so that's definitely something that we want to happen. We want people to bring their expertise to specific tasks, and we know that means they would probably have an advantage in that task if they create it themselves. But we're really interested in the greater output of that. So obviously we'll have to validate a task before we can add it to the whole subnet to make sure that there's not some sort of backdoor or something they could use to just give themselves a perpetual advantage. We're going to have a pretty strict validation rule book for what constitutes a task that we can add to the subnet. But that is the plan, is to just allow anyone to contribute.
I think it's very novel. I don't think it's been done on Bittensor before, where there's been a subnet that's effectively done a variety of different challenges all at the same time. So I'm really excited to see how you guys take this and do it properly. One question for the chat is, how are you getting the data from the satellites? Like, where is this stuff?
Steven, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can answer that. So we're getting, at least for the soil moisture task, we're getting almost all of our data from NASA's publicly available APIs. They even permit all the data for commercial use as well, which is amazing. Weather forecast data is actually an interesting problem. ERA 5 weather satellite would be the natural choice. However, that also has delays. So we have to go to the European Center for medium range forecasts for that data. But all of these APIs are publicly available and without any borders. I think that was the most important thing, was making sure that people from other countries weren't, isolated away from becoming a miner and getting involved.
Well, ultimately, Stephen, the miners will find a way to get the data, even if you don't provide it to them. And I guarantee you that they will use every means possible to attain that data. So it's nice when the validators are providing the data that can be used for the miners to train their models. I think that's a great thing to do, but in practice, the miners will go out and get it themselves. What the validators, you guys, the subnet owners, need to do is figure out how to get the validation data. If that validation data is slow, it actually doesn't matter too much, because you could delay the validation, and the miners can go out and solve the hard problem of getting the real-time data, whether that's costly or they have to bribe an official in the government. I don't know what it is. They will certainly do it.
Right. That raises a good point. And I think the reason we chose, at least for the soil test, to have the validator provide some of the data, at least for the base model or minor inference, was there was some concerns with overloading these publicly accessible APIs, because there are researchers doing genuinely very critical things with this data, and especially in the future when we scale up, a lot of these tasks will have some of the same data or rasters that we use. So I think our vision is the validators provide enough data to run the base models for inference, but we do expect the miners to go out and pull better data, like maybe synthetic aperture radar data, for example, because that lets you see past clouds. If one of the regions has a lot of cloud coverage, they'll actually get better performance if they use that data. Or maybe, you know, they want more weather bands for some sort of physics informed model. We do encourage them to do that.
Super cool, guys.
Yeah, and sorry,
we'll see it. Sorry.
I just wanted to add one thing on like data and modeling is on the DST side. Like there are miners that are top performing miners because it's obvious they have taken initiative and created their own models and expanded their data that they're running models with. So it's definitely we can see it happening for sure.
Yeah,
yes.
Even at 1% emissions, I mean, the same thing happened with Nextplace. It just went a lot faster than anybody expected, which is awesome. Shows the power of the network for sure.
You have to lean into that. And it almost expected. I mean, there was one thing that we always discovered making the first subnet on Bittensor was, we tried to build a nice tool for the miners to use, and we would shortly learn that they were about 10 steps ahead of us in terms of that tooling. You can only do so much against the literal force of incentives. So this is fantastic, guys. Like I think the vision of tackling, climate understanding, the fact that you named this project GAIA, I love it. That we can possibly try to approach and solve problems like climate change by understanding the problems one step at a time up the ladder is like fantastic and super exciting. I'm really glad this subnet is on Bittensor, guys, and it sounds like there's some serious and sophisticated researchers behind it.
Thanks, really appreciate that. Those are kind words. We're really excited about it too, and thanks everyone for listening in. Come check us out. We're on Discord. We're at GaiaResearch.ai, all that. We definitely want to talk to people who have research in the field or are just interested. We're always looking for new ideas, new tasks. So if you have an idea, just hit us up and we'll talk about it.
Thanks, David. Bad English, pleasure to have you on the stage here today. The rest of the Nickel5 team, fantastic performance, great presentation. I think if there's any questions in the chat, you can put them in. People can answer them after the fact, but let's end it here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.